Once upon a time, in a quiet little village, there stood a small house with a lovely garden. In that garden was a cozy wooden doghouse, and in that doghouse lived a kind little dog named Max. Max was no ordinary dog. He had a gentle heart and loved watching the world go by. Every day he would trot around the village, wagging his tail, greeting the people and animals alike. But one rainy afternoon, something unusual happened. As Max was returning home from his daily walk, he heard a tiny sound, peep, peep, coming from a nearby bush. Curious, Max tiptoed closer and found a tiny, featherless baby bird lying on the cold ground, shivering and helpless. It had just hatched, and somehow it had fallen from its nest. Max gently sniffed the little bird and saw how weak and scared it was. Just then, Max spotted a hungry cat prowling nearby, its eyes fixed on the poor chick. Max knew he had to act fast. Without hesitation, he picked up the baby bird ever so carefully in his mouth and ran back to his doghouse. He laid the bird on a soft blanket and curled his warm body around it, keeping it safe and cozy. From that day on, Max became the baby bird's protector and parent. He named him Chirpy. Max fed Chirpy crushed berries, bits of bread, and even learned how to find worms in the garden. Every day he kept Chirpy warm with his fur and comforted him with gentle licks and quiet whoops. The days passed, and Chirpy grew stronger. Tiny feathers began to sprout. He chirped louder and started hopping around the doghouse. Max watched with pride as his little friend learned to flap his wings. They became the best of friends, playing in the garden, chasing butterflies, and lying together under the warm sun. Together, Max and Chirpy shared many adventures. They explored the tall grass fields, watched the stars at night, and even scared off a sneaky squirrel who tried to steal their snacks. Wherever Max went, Chirpy was close behind, or perched on his head. But as summer turned into autumn, Chirpy's wings had grown strong and full. One breezy morning, Chirpy flapped his wings and lifted off the ground, hovering for the first time. Max watched with wide eyes and a happy heart. "You're ready," he said softly. Chirpy chirped and flew in a small circle, then landed on Max's nose. He didn't want to leave, but he knew he had to. It was time to explore the sky and find other birds. With one last nuzzle, Chirpy took off, flying high above the trees, dancing in the wind. Max wagged his tail, proud and a little sad, but mostly filled with joy. He had saved a life, raised a friend, and now let him fly free. And even though Chirpy flew far and wide, he never forgot Max. Every now and then he would return, landing softly on the doghouse roof, and Max would bark happily, their bond never broken. For in that little village everyone knew a dog once did a great deed and gained a friend for life. Once upon a time, there was a boy named John who was so lazy he'd rather have food brought to his bed than walk to the table. His mother often scolded him, "John, get up and help me in the field." But he would just roll over and mumble, "Just 5 more minutes, Mom." And those 5 minutes always turned into the whole day. When it rained, John was happy because he didn't have to go outside. When the sun shone, he said it was too hot to work. The children in the village wanted to play with him, but he just waved them away. "Too much effort," he'd say. Eventually, everyone started avoiding him. After all, who wants a friend who does nothing? One day, John was wandering lazily by the forest when he saw an old woman struggling with a heavy sack. "John, help me, dear boy." she asked kindly, but John just yawned and replied, "If I didn't have to, I wouldn't even move." The old woman smiled, placed the sack on the ground, and said, "Well, since you're like that, I have something special for you, a magical blanket. Under it, you'll have the most beautiful dreams, and you'll never need to get up again." John excitedly took the blanket home and snuggled under it. As soon as he closed his eyes, he was pulled into a strange dream world. He found himself in a bizarre kingdom where everyone lay in giant beds and did nothing all day. "Welcome, John," called King Sloth the Fourth, who wore a pillow instead of a crown. "Here, you'll never need to work. Servants will bring you food and lull you to sleep with stories." John lay back happily, thinking this was the life for him. But soon he began to feel strange. The food didn't taste good anymore, the stories became boring, and the whole kingdom felt gloomy. "This isn't as fun as I thought," he whispered to himself. With a jolt, John woke up. The first thing he did was throw off the magical blanket. "No, I don't want to be lazy any more," he shouted as he jumped out of bed. The old woman was gone, but on the table lay a note. "Laziness is sweet only for a moment, but true joy comes from doing something worthwhile." From that day on, John changed. He grabbed a hoe and helped his mother in the field. He even went out to play with the other children. Soon they started seeing him differently. They no longer laughed at him. They admired him. One day, a terrible storm struck the village, and a river overflowed. People panicked, unsure what to do. John had an idea. "We must build a barrier with sandbags," he shouted, and filled the first sack himself. The villagers followed his lead, and soon everyone was working together. When the flood waters finally receded, they thanked John. The mayor came forward and said, "John, today you saved our homes. Who would have guessed the laziest boy would become the most hard-working young man in the village?" John smiled, because he knew that lazy old John was gone for good. From that day forward, John never feared hard work again. The villagers respected him, and he was happier than ever. And whenever he saw someone making excuses out of laziness, he'd smile and say, "Try doing something. You might actually like it." And you know what? He was usually right.